So, as I said before, China was more of a benevolent rulers, whereas in medieval times, occasionally there were good kings, occasionally there were people who actually represented the people well in Europe, but the majority of the time it was a dictatorship. The people hated their king and they couldn't really do anything about it. And interestingly enough, it was only until China actually had its first contact with the West, many years later, when they actually started to industrialize, when Western powers such as Britain, I can't remember his name exactly, but when the first British ambassador came to China and tried to get China to open up ports to them, that's the only time they actually started changing the rulership, when, in a sense, it became more of a dictatorship, more instating powers, or more a strict rulership, if you will. Like when Deng's Capitalist Party now, or the Communist Party in a capitalist society, is in power now. They're, in a sense, they're not even really communists. They're their own party, hoarding money, so that increasing the rich-poor gap, to, in a sense, when the people finally rise up and actually take them down, so they can move on to socialism and then communism. Because Deng, again, didn't believe with Mao's beliefs. And, in a sense, capitalism came from the West. Capitalism is, to me at least, a fast way of making money to actually industrialize and militarize your state itself. So why wouldn't Europe want to have a capitalist society if they can actually make a lot of money fast and industrialize fast? However, the downside is it increases the rich-poor gap, and the actual social life of the country itself diminishes. Therefore, it leads to things such as Occupy Wall Street. Yes, it was sort of a joke, but it's where the poor get fed up of being abused by the rich, because the rich-poor gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then this poor will start rebelling against the rich again. It kind of comes from a quote where the rich wage war, while the poor learn to die. Poor really don't. In a capitalist society, the poor don't really have a say in political affairs or whether their country should go to war or not. It's mostly made by the capitalists at the top of the food chain, who have the most money and the most power in society that can actually go in and claim war. And again, this all relates back to, is geography destiny? One planet, two worlds. A more warlike area and a more peaceful area. Now, if we take a look at art-wise, how art was actually improved during that time because of this isolation for China. China, at least, has some of the most beautiful art from the, as you call it, the hippies writing poetry and calligraphy up in the garden party, or just all the Confucian classics such as the Shu Jing. And this is all because scholars, artists, people who actually really want to make art, not really fighters, learn to actually, or have the opportunity to actually thrive, try new mechanics, learn new things, basically improve the nation culturally, as opposed to European side. If we take it the Middle Ages, for example, in England or Europe, that was probably the most, another word for the Middle Ages, Dark Ages. Why were they dark? No art, no brains, no government. There were kings, queens, dukes. It was a feudalist system. However, the peasants weren't even really a class. They were barely considered human beings, because they honestly had nothing. They were living off the land as best they could. It was a complete dark time. Education was not valued whatsoever. And in a sense, the rich got rich, poor got poorer. Again, this can be related back to a more warlike state, how these governments want to hoard the money for themselves so they can actually make decisions for the nation as a whole. However, art was not allowed to flourish because of this. Whereas in China, during their quote-unquote dark ages, yes, there wasn't very much industrialization or progress, but in the world of art, the hippies and other Confucian scholars were making works of literature, making works of art, practicing calligraphy, paintings, tapestries, all the works. And again, this is due to the fact that they were not pushed by war. And they weren't pushed by actually having to defend themselves.